A little bit of Earl Scruggs for you.
Yeah.
You know, it is amazing. We celebrated his 100th birthday on January 6th of this year, and it's been a whole month of celebration for banjo players all over the world. And gosh, we've each studied this man's playing for 50 years or more, and there's always something that surprises. There's always something that is even more evidence of genius. And one of the wonderful things about what Earl achieved was that I think for most people, especially with all of the learning materials that are available these days, you can grab a banjo and put picks on and play Cripple Creek pretty quickly. You know, if you have a good head about you. But then the technique and the style is limitless. You could be within it forever. Which musicians like Sonny Osborne and J.D. Crowe within the bluegrass world, Terry Balcom, that's exactly what they did. They adopted that roll-based style to fit their own playing. And we've got other ways of playing the banjo too that are called melodic and single string style that involve scales. But scales were not discovered on the banjo till the late 1950s. That's a joke. But we didn't start really worrying about them until then. But that's how I feel about Earl. How about you?
Oh, definitely. You know, he's the one that sort of sparked the fire in many, many people, including, as Bill says, Bill and I, and many others. But it's just, and it's great to hear him even to this day, those recordings. They're still, you know, the best of that kind of playing,
Definitely.
you know, unparalleled, unmatched since then. So he left a great legacy for sure.
Alan is one of my main mentors. I've been blessed to have many mentors, from Ben Eldridge to Tony Trischka to Alan. And Sonny Osborne was another mentor of mine. Got to know him quite well and miss him very much. And Sonny once told me, you know, if you learn everything that Earl Scruggs played from 1949 to 1961, you can do anything on the banjo. But then he also indicated, as he was a professional player, that he heard Earl make a mistake on a record. And he said, gosh, if they left that there and they published the record, they pressed the record with that mistake, what were the takes that sounded like that they chose not to? And at that point, he started exploring his own sounds and living in Nashville at that time in the 50s, the lush country music of Patsy Cline. You know, he was listening to saxophone players and piano players and the Grand Ole Opry folks. And so we'll give you another radically different kind of taste of what can be done within bluegrass. But this is one of Sonny Osborne's tunes. We all have guilty pleasures in music, you know, things that we might enjoy, but we don't want to tell our friends because we don't want them to think we're not cool. And for Sonny Osborne, it was Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. And maybe that strikes a chord with some of you out there too. And so he wrote a tune called Siempre. And he told me music business was so different back then. He said that Chet Atkins actually was the first to record this on one of his instrumental albums, and Sonny went out to the mailbox one day and opened it up, and there was a check from BMI for $40,000 when publishing was actually paid people. But I love the way Sonny plays this on banjo, and we'll slow it way down, and we've changed the key. He played it in B with the capo. We're going to play it in G. Here's a Siempre, and if you start, you know, thinking about Herb Alpert in the Tijuana Brass, that's okay too. Awesome. Really different sound.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
He was quite a guy.
For those just tuning in, that is, of course, the duo we are calling Alan Munde and Bill Evans, and that's because, well, it's their names, after all. And they are in the midst, we're getting ready to start off on a big tour, and this is a good time for me to point out that both of these gentlemen have won the Steve Martin Banjo Prize, and that's quite an event to be able to have. And Alan did it in 2021, Bill in 2022, I believe, and a lot of great names have been up there right here in Virginia. We've got Sammy Sheeler, who's one of the early folks who got it, and Noam Pikelny, to young Victor Furtado. So it's a great list of folks that have done it, and we're proud of one and all, and including these two gentlemen up here on the stage. Alan, I want to go back to you for a second. We touched on this briefly yesterday, but we missed one of the groups you played with. Of course, we talked about Jimmy Martin and later on with Country Gazette, but in between, you did have a short stint with the Flying Burrito Brothers, did you not?
Oh, I did. And it was totally by accident in many ways, but I grew up in Oklahoma. He said I went to the University of Oklahoma, and at the university at the same time was a really, really world-class fiddle player by the name of Byron Berline. And Byron had played with Bill Monroe. After that, he was in the Army, and then he went to California and was out there. And when I was with Jimmy Martin, I called or wrote him. I can't remember, back in the day before the internet and cell phones, you had to save up your money to make a long-distance call. So I probably wrote him a letter and said I was going to leave Jimmy, and if there was any work out in California, I'd love to come out there. And he said, well, I'm getting this group together with Roger Bush and Kenny Wirtz called Country Gazette. If you'd like to be in that, we'd love to have you. So I said, sure, count me in. So I had planned to go to California. And then he got back in touch with me, and this is kind of long and convoluted, but he got back in touch with me and said that he and Roger had been touring with the Flying Burrito Brothers, and they had a European tour booked, but Chris Hillman and Al Perkins were leaving the band to go with Stephen Stills, and they sort of abandoned these bookings in Europe. But their agent, Eddie Tickner, came to Byron and said, if you could put a band together called the Flying Burrito Brothers, along with Rick Roberts, who had been in the group at that time, and the dates over there will take the band, would you be willing to do that? And Byron said yes. So Byron called back and he said, besides Country Gazette, we're doing this Burrito Brother tour. Would you play guitar? Well, I played guitar some. So I said, sure. When you're musicians, you try not to say no. If you're not working, you try to not say no. So I said yes. And so in January of 1972, I drove back home to Norman, Oklahoma for Christmas, and then in January 2nd, I went to the airport, met Byron there in Oklahoma City, flew to New York City, and that's when I met the band. And we flew to Amsterdam and did a bunch of dates over there. And I will say this, because I think it's kind of humorous, is the first couple of gigs, I had the volume turned off on my guitar because I didn't know the tunes. It was, but I sort of had to earn your volume. So as I would learn a tune, I would turn it up and play along on it and turn it down on the ones I didn't. So we did 2 or 3 weeks in Europe, had a great time. Country Gazette, all the members of Country Gazette were there. We rehearsed and got that going, went back home, and the crowds loved it over there. They were real enthusiastic and very welcoming. went back home, drove out to California with Byron, followed him out there, started this whole Country Gazette thing, and the manager came back and said, you know, they loved you over there. Would you go again? Well, yes is the answer. And so we went back over and did it again. And it lasted, that part of it lasted a brief while for me, and Country Gazette got going, so we sort of abandoned any of the Flying Burrito Brothers thing. But I would like to mention one thing, that, you know, there is a movie called Being There, Peter Sellers, and it's all about being there. You know, you can't do things unless you're there. So 30 years later, David Greer, who's a very, very fine guitar player, calls me up and he says, there's a new book out called, it's either 101 or 1001. I'll say 101 Great Guitarists. And David says, I'm in there. And I said, well, David, you deserve to be in there. You're easily one of the 101 greatest guitar players. And then he said, but you're in there too. And I went, my God, how could that be? So I went out and bought the book and opened it up, and they list all the players, and then there I am, and they list example of my recording was the Flying Burrito Brothers live in Amsterdam. And I thought, well, this is back in the day when I just turned it off. So, and I played a solo on there on that record, I think, but it's just funny how the world is, you know. If you just show up, sometimes somebody notices and mentions you 30 years later. So.
Well, I think those Country Gazette records were mind-blowingly great. Not only for you, your musicianship, and Byron and Clarence White was on the second album, but also just the material and the innovative approach to vocals. And Herb Peterson is on a lot of that. And you know, the idea of writing tunes, that one could write a tune, you know, was kind of a new concept for me. You know, when I was first learning to play, I thought that the only thing that could be played was whatever was in the Earl Scruggs book, that nothing else could be played. And then I'm listening to records, and oh yeah, there is other stuff. And we're going to play a tune from the second album from Country Gazette, 1973, I believe is the year.
Yes.
And it's called, the album is Don't Give Up Your Day Job. And I'm going to let Alan tell you about the tune.
Well, I've already talked a great deal.
Oh no, but this is a great story. I love it.
Oh, well, this
if you don't
tune,
mind.
When I was in L.A. in the early 70s, Byron was very much in demand as studio musician, so he would get calls, and if they wanted a banjo player, he'd get me involved on it. So we went over, just Byron and I, and it was to be a commercial for a Mazda pickup truck. And many of you who might remember, Mazda at one time introduced a new engine called the Wankel engine. And in this use of the word, it's a clean word, by the way.
Yeah, it's a noun.
It's a noun, proper noun, actually. And it was a man's name that invented the engine. And they wanted to do this commercial and show all the things that you could haul in a Mazda pickup. So we watched the producer told us what it was. It was about 25 seconds of just showing the pickup, and then maybe 15 seconds of flashing on all the things you could carry in the pickup. So they'd have a load of wood, a load of gravel, a load of trash, you know, bricks and so on like that. And so he said, I want 25 seconds of regular picking, and then I want something that moves a lot for when they have all these flashes on these. So Byron and I sat down, and the gentleman held a stopwatch. And Byron and I sat actually very much like Bill and I are sitting. Byron played guitar, I played banjo with a stopwatch. And we would fashion a tune that would match the stopwatch. You know, so we'd do, and I'm making up these numbers, 25 seconds of the A part, and then 15 seconds on the B part, and then back to the A part, and then an ending. And that tune turned out to be kind of interesting for Byron, and me. So we called it Deputy Dalton because the producer of that session, his name was Dan Dalton, but also the drummer with the Brito Brothers was Eric Dalton, and he wore a badge, and we called him Eric Dalton. So this is Deputy Dalton.
Yeah,
No, we
and
called him Deputy
Deputy
Dalton.
The tune has outlived the engine.
Yes.
This may sound like well, if we play it okay, it'll sound incredible. Like how did two banjo players do this? And the way that it works is that we're playing roll patterns all the time, and if you know what the roll pattern is that the other player is going to play, you just go to the higher chord. It's really simple. We can show any of you this in about 5 minutes. So here's Deputy Dalton, and we'll get it in as much harmony as we can, right from the beginning, I guess,
Yes.
huh? Okay. I hope I remember this in A. Like, count it?
Yes.
Oh, me. 1, 2, 3. Love that tune. I jinxed myself by explaining it, and then I've forgotten what to play.
Sometimes you look down at your instrument and you go, wow, where am I?
Yes. Yes, indeed.
It's like driving home and all of a sudden, I don't recognize where I am. All right, Bill.
Well, for those just tuning in, we do have Alan Munde and Bill Evans here on the stage at WTJU. They are doing a whole variety of concerts that start, I think, tomorrow. Some workshops and concerts.
I can give you if you go to BillEvansBanjo.com on the schedule page. That's
or MundayMusic.com as well.
Okay.
That's up there as well.
You finally
But
put those dates up, huh? Good.
he's got them up. Yeah, no, that's where I was going.
I can list it real quickly. Just Greensboro, North Carolina tomorrow night, Bloomingdale, Georgia, Randy Woods on Saturday, and then now I'm forgetting Newark, Delaware next Friday, Philadelphia Saturday, Falls Church, Virginia the following Sunday, Baltimore Monday, then Charlottesville on February 7th. And Alan and I are actually going to be teaching a banjo workshop for all levels at Waynesboro Music, a great new bluegrass music store that has opened up near downtown Waynesboro. That's Friday. And then also we're going to be in Raleigh for the Pinecone folks the day before. That's February 8th. And then we end things down in Floyd at the general store down there. And many of these dates will be teaching a workshop along with the concert.
So BillEvansBanjo.com and then, of course, Alan's website as well, MundayMusic.com. Well, Alan, you talked about Chet Atkins being a big influence. I'm curious, did you ever have a chance to sit down with Chet at all?
Never met him in my whole life, never ever once. But, like Earl Scruggs, he was also, for the guitar players of that era, from the 40s and 50s, he was a huge, huge influence. And for a banjo player, what got me about his playing and his music was that it was a very polished and I'll say professional presentation. And so I took those sort of elements and tried to incorporate them in the music I play, but especially on recordings. And there are a lot of people that play well and pick and whatnot, but when you come down to have to record something, you've got to have it pretty together to do it. So I learned that, and Chet Atkins sort of showed the way on a lot of those kinds of things.
Definitely. We're going to play, Alan and I are grateful for the career that we've had playing banjo basically in the bluegrass genre, but you always have to have something in your back pocket in case the road starts to run out. And so we looked hard at with a social science perspective of looking at what the next big thing on the horizon might be, and we have come to the conclusion that it's going to be polka music. So we are positioning ourselves early on to be the polka kings of the banjo. And we're going to play a medley of polkas. And the second one, I'll let Alan tell you about the first one, but the second one was something I worked up when I lived in Charlottesville and way back. And I heard John McCutcheon play at Old Cabell Hall, and he played this on hammered dulcimer, and I was much taken with it. And I bought the clarinet sheet music. And I guess down through the years, people have requested tabs for this and wanted to know how I tried to do it. We'll see what happens tonight. But it's weird to be the Myron Florin of the banjo, but I'll take it. And so I'm going to play Cornet Polka, and you're going to play...
I'm going to play a tune one that I wrote called the Border Baby Boogie Polka. It was taken from, sort of modeled after an older one called Hannibal Crossing the Alps on Elephant Back Polka.
Yeah, I have that record.
Yeah, we can wait for the laughter to die down.
They're very serious,
Yeah.
these guys.
Okay.
All right, I love playing this tune, trying to remember the chords.
They
couple
might-
polkas there
Yeah.
from Alan Munde and Bill Evans. And hey, this is a good time for me to let folks know, just circling back to Alan's first instrument, the accordion, that he's got a great squeeze box player playing with him on one of the tracks of his upcoming, or his brand new album Excelsior, out on Patuxent now. The Grammy-winning Josh Baca from Los Tex Maniacs. So
Yes, yeah. It was. I'd like to say that the producer on that recording was Billy Bright, who's a really great mandolin player and appears on the recording playing the mandolin. But he knew that the accordion was my first love, and so he suggested we should have an accordion player on this record. And he was friends with Josh Baca, as you mentioned, who's a really wonderful younger generation of Tex-Mex accordion players, and he plays on it, and he plays absolutely wonderful. So I was happy to have him.
You were mentioning that your sister's accordion teacher was the runner-up for Miss Oklahoma, and she played the accordion.
Yes.
Did the winner play the banjo?
You know, that's a good question.
It would make sense to me, the two most maligned instruments in the world in
And
Oklahoma.
I'm going to say this, I don't know if it's true or not, but Anita Bryant, if anybody remembers the name Anita Bryant, she sold orange juice for a long time. And she was actually Miss Oklahoma. And she probably won that year, being Anita Bryant, you know, so.
well, with the Folk Marathon coming up, I just want to let folks know I'll be kicking off with a program called Instruments of the Apocalypse, and banjo and accordion are both part of that. So that kicks off on the 5th of February at 6 a.m.
What a cheerful way
Yeah.
to
Thanks so very much.
check the tuning. This is called a cello banjo, and this is tuned an octave lower. This one is, or it was a moment ago. And we're going to play the song that Earl Scruggs was playing when he added that middle finger to his style, changing it from a two-finger style to what we call three-finger, which is really a thumb and two fingers. And the tune that he was playing is called Reuben. It's an old-time tune. And we're both playing it in G tuning, oddly enough. Earl played it in D tuning. Back in the day, you know, learning from records, I was fortunate that our family had a Sears Silvertone stereo that had 16 RPM. And the only item that I've ever stolen in my life, I worked at the Norfolk Public Library, and they had records that you could check out. Remember that, when you could check out records? And there was a Flatt & Scruggs record that had not been checked out in 20 years. So I took it, and I still have it. I don't know what the overdue fees would be at this point. It was a Mercury recording, but I learned in part how to play by slowing that down. But 33 1/3 is the speed for your albums, but 16 is the slower speed. So not quite an octave. You always had to tune it a little bit to get. So this is really kind of like taking me back to learning,
Right, that's what it sounded like.
Exactly. So we'll just have some fun with Reuben.
All right.
Thank you. The cello banjo.
Alan Munde and Bill Evans. They're on the stage here at WTJU. You can find out where they're playing in your area over at BillEvansBanjo.com as well as MundeMusic.com. That's MUNDE music.com. And they're also doing some workshops, and I imagine y'all are doing some camps coming up, aren't you?
Camps, gosh, yes, always. Camps are so much fun. Get a bunch of people together in a beautiful place, hopefully with great food for the weekend, or maybe a whole week in the summer. And sometimes they're all just banjos, which is great, but sometimes there's all the instruments. And gosh, Alan has directed a camp now for how many years at South Plains College in Lebanon, Texas?
This is our 35th year, I'll say.
35th year, wow.
Yeah,
and folks, Alan taught at South Plains College. There was a bluegrass and commercial music program there in Levelland, Texas. It's the gateway to the mountains, and that's a joke too.
Yeah.
And gosh, folks from Ron Block, Ben Clark, the Purple Hulls, all some great musicians went through that program.
Yeah.
Yeah. But gosh, yeah, how many camps will you be doing this year?
Oh, I probably do about 9 or 10 a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the way from the Swanee Banjo Camp in Florida. Steve Kaufman's camp, out to Portland, or not Portland, but Seattle area with American Banjo Camp and the Midwest Banjo Camp, and you're doing Banjo Camp North, and we're just all over the place. We've infected the country with banjo.
I've read some banjo players out there who talked about how you are able to get even someone who's never picked up a banjo before to be able to play something within just a few minutes. What is your trick of the trade there to get folks actually?
You just have to explain it to them just right, I guess. It's kind of difficult being a teacher in a sense, because to me it seems, and I'm sure to other good players, it seems obvious what we're doing, but so hard to explain. And I've always joked with my wife. She said, "What did you do at camp?" And I said, "Well, you do a lot of put your first finger on the first fret of the first string. No, that's your third finger. No, that's the fourth fret. No,"
It's already hard.
Yeah, so it's, learning the nomenclature and all the things. After you get that, it's you just have to move your fingers. I always am surprised that people will say, "Oh, I love music, but I don't have any talent for playing music. I've tried to play the guitar, but I can't seem to get my fingers to do the things." And they'll turn right around and sit down at a computer keyboard and just rattle the keys. And there'll be a paragraph, punctuated correctly, and it all makes sense, and it's very good thoughts. But they're not talented enough to take a flat pick and go down, up, down, up, and move your fingers here. So it's a puzzle to me why everybody doesn't play.
Well, I think one of our responsibilities as teachers is to try to instill in folks that they can do it.
I hope
You
so.
can move that flat pick.
Yes.
Down
And
and up.
a big difference from these days with all these camps going on and the workshops. Alan, when you were growing up, there weren't a lot. I mean, you had a little bit of banjo help, but you were pretty much sitting at home listening to the recordings, weren't you?
Right. Or watching TV a lot, hoping that you'd see a banjo player go by, sometime during the month. And I always remember hearing Mac Wiseman say he wanted a guitar, and his parents finally gave him one. And he said it took him a year to find somebody who knew how to tune it. So things have changed greatly since then. You can go on YouTube and find almost anything. And so it's a different world for sure.
Yeah. We're going to play a tune from Alan's new record called Excelsior. And I'll let you explain what the meaning of that is in a minute. And I just want to let you know, if whether you're a banjo fan or a mandolin fan, one of the themes of this record are these stunning duets with mandolin players, many great mandolin players, from Steve Smith, who spent a good deal of time here, to Don Sternberg, Billy Bright, and more. But gosh, Alan has recorded some classic records. The Banjo Sandwich record of 1975 is a classic. Banjo Kid Picks Again, festival favorites. Excelsior, wow, it's a tremendous record, and I invite you all to purchase a copy at the Front Porch Show or stream it on your preferred device. It's a beautiful record, and we're going to play a tune from it right now, but I'll let you talk.
All right, this is a tune that I wrote that is, as Bill says, is on this recording, and it's for the banjo players out there. It's in the key of E, but it's played out of what we call would be open, out of the G tuning, no capo, but the fifth string is at the ninth fret at a B, so you get that sort of a sound, and it's kind of a wonky tune. And I really enjoyed after I got it together, and it reminded me, oddly enough, of a steel guitar tune. And I have a very good friend, Lloyd Maines, who is a record producer, both starting in Lubbock, which is where I knew him, but in Austin. And he produced the Dixie Chicks and many others. And by producing the Dixie Chicks, his daughter, Natalie Maines, is one of the Chicks now, they're called. And he had a part in that. So anyway, I named this in tribute to Lloyd, and it's called Lloyds of Lubbock.
Go right into it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you very much.
You're listening to WTJU Charlottesville, and it is 6 o'clock. And I just want to thank these two for stopping by our stage and performing for us ahead of their February 7 concert here in Charlottesville at the Front Porch. You can find out where else they're playing at BillEvansBanjo.com as well as MundyMusic.com. And gentlemen, as you play me off so I can run upstairs, do you maybe have a short piece you might be able to just...
Would you play Byron's Bud? I'll just back you up.
All right, here we go. We'll just play a little tune as you head upstairs. Thank you very much.
Goodness, what a treat that was. Alan Mundy.
For coming. Really, thank you for coming. Alan Mundy, everybody.
Thanks to Bill for getting it all together.
Do you know Pete and Ellen Vigor? Great, great musicians. Right there. You're about to meet Pete.
Ah,
and Midwest. They entertain.
oh, very good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yes.
You changed my life with the joke about two parrots sitting on a park.
Oh, man, that's a good one, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. We had a whole room with 700 people going.
Scratching their heads. Here's another one. It's different. The waiter brings a guy a steak and he's got his thumb on it. And the guy says to the waiter, "You got your thumb on my steak." And he said, "Well, I didn't want to drop it again."